This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
This is Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are this week Jason McGuire at New York Families and Dan Bartkowiak at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Well, all of a sudden, guys, it got to be summer. That means closing time at the state capitals. Dan, I want to begin with you. The state budget is due in about a month, and I know there's a lot of wheeling and dealing and lobbying that goes on in Harrisburg this time of year. What are the spending items or policy issues that the Pennsylvania Family Institute is keeping an eye on?
Yeah, well, certainly you mentioned spending. I think it's spending within our means. Our governor wants to spend billions more in his budget proposal. A majority of the state's rainy day fund would cover those costs, and frankly, it's just not sustainable. So there's a lot of talk about education. We certainly need to have better investments in education. The federal education tax program, we need Shapiro to opt Pennsylvania into that program. Really pushing back, too, on ill-advised projected revenue sources. Marijuana legalization, if you calculate the costs with more marijuana commercialization, it's really going to bring in more harm to communities. So we need solid investments that don't make our communities worse.
15 budget extenders, I believe, they've passed in Albany this year. The budget was due April 1st. Finally, it is beginning to take shape. Shouldn't be too much longer now, Jason. This is the latest state budget in 16 years in New York. Is there any legislative curveballs that you're keeping an eye on?
Well, it's unlikely much can change the budget process at this point. The bills are being printed, they're moving to the floor, they're being passed and approved, and the governor is signing them. There are 10 budget bills in totality. Really, we saw a number of issues the governor wanted, though, in what we often refer to as that big ugly. It's where they put a lot of policy in the fiscal plan, and whether or not you agree or disagree with some of what's in that big ugly, it does indicate that the governor's strategy of just waiting, and using the leverage has helped her to accomplish her goals in this state budget.
Dan, let's go back to Harrisburg. Governor Shapiro got almost 500,000 more votes in his uncontested primary last week than Stacey Garrity did in hers. Any reason for Republicans to be worried about that?
Well, I think what I would draw attention to for Republicans is how the votes came in. Nearly half the votes for Josh Shapiro, was around 44%, came in through mail-in voting. And for Republicans, mail-in voting was about 22% for Stacey Garrity. So I'm not a fan of mail-in voting. We had absentee ballots available before, but it is now one significant way to calculate votes in Pennsylvania, and I think you can't overlook that. The fact is, in Pennsylvania, while there's still more registered Democrats than Republicans, the margin's shrinking. Since Shapiro was elected, now there's been a decrease in registered Democrats, an increase in registered Republicans. There's a large rise in registered independents. So I think there's opportunities specifically for Republicans to make a case to some of those independent voters before November's election that they should keep in mind.
All right. And Primary Day in New York is June 23rd, if I look at the calendar, Jason, so that's fast approaching. One-party rule has been the political reality for almost a decade in New York. I think the last time Republicans controlled anything was the state Senate back in 2018. So it's been a while. Do you see any of that changing after this year's midterms?
Well, I don't see major changes in the legislature. There will probably be some movement a little bit this way, a little bit that way, but certainly not that's going to tip control back into the Republicans at this point. That's going to be probably a longer-term strategy for years down the road that will take to claw back control of those legislative chambers.
Supermajorities, anything like that, and going to be changing as a result of the election?
It could. I mean, we're on such the bubble now in the supermajority that, one or two seats this way or that way could change it, but it has little direct impact on the legislature itself and what bills do move or blocked. So it's not really a key point for us at this point.
Yeah. One other thing, and we'll move on. There's been polling that suggests that Bruce Blakeman is closing ground and actually maybe even leading Governor Hochul when it comes to independent voters. Do you put much stock in that polling, Jason?
It's awfully early to put a lot of stock in the polling. It's not that the race isn't going to tighten. It will tighten considerably. There's probably 32% of the population is going to vote Republican no matter what. And then, as we saw in the Lee Zeldin race 4 years ago, do you have enough to overcome the final 5 or 6% you need to actually win the race?
Let's switch gears and talk about artificial intelligence. I know this is an issue in the news a lot. The Pope issued some guidance recently on preserving human dignity in the face of AI. He compared AI to modern-day Tower of Babel. Dan, I'll begin with you. From a faith perspective, what is most concerning to you when it comes to the proliferation of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, well, certainly AI is much in the news, and my concern would be Christians avoiding the conversation. The Pope recognized digitalization, AI, robotics, transforming our world, and it's the dominant conversation really our culture's facing, and certainly need guardrails with regards to AI, and I think some of those are on the personal level. I can always remember Pastor John Piper. He asked ChatGPT for a prayer, spits out wonderful words, and Piper asks, "Is that praise?" And he emphatically says no, and we can't be so dependent on a machine. I think at the same time, I appreciate the words former U.S. Senator Ben Sasse, who we've brought up before, had an article recently, Wall Street Journal, saying the biggest divide in America is going to be between people who figure out harnessing that technology versus those that are outsourcing their affections and their habits. And so I think there's this harnessing versus outsourcing. I think Christians can and should be part of harnessing the tools of AI.
Yeah. Do you use it or does it use you? There's a great debate there about that. I saw recently, Jason, the Surgeon General issuing its very first warning about screen use in children, and AI is a part of that conversation. What challenges or opportunities has AI presented the church and Christians in general when you think of this issue?
It's a challenge and an opportunity. I mean, really both are there. If you look back, you remember how the cell phone, the mobile phone, has become such an important part of our lives. And there are pros and cons of it. We're seeing problems with screen time with kids, but at the same time, there's tremendous benefit now for churches who are using live streaming and are reaching out to their communities through social media. I think the same is going to be true of AI. There are going to be some definite benefits of it, and then there are going to be some real challenges when we begin to form emotional attachments with AI chat bots and things along those lines that are becoming a problem for some people.
Yeah.
So the challenge for us is going to be, how do we use it as a tool and not become subject to it as our master?
Amen. Let's circle back around and talk about the midterms. Dan, I heard Stacey Garrity give an interview after the primaries that she thinks the local issues are going to trump national concerns, whether it be the war in Iran or issues with affordability. She thinks it's going to come down to local issues in this election. Is she right? What do you think is going to motivate the voters this fall?
Well, whether it's national, local, I think it's hard not to point one to gas prices. I just paid $100 to fill up my car.
Yeah.
So certainly that's there. Utility bills, I just saw electricity's gone up 50% in the last 8 years. So I think you can't avoid some of those economic challenges, but also I think, issues of just how extreme some of the parties have become. I point to issues that we engage upon, abortion and pushing taxpayer funding for any stage in pregnancy of abortion, seeing some of the parties take positions there, protecting girls' sports, what it means to be a man and a woman. You have the Supreme Court Justice, David Wecht in Pennsylvania, leaving the Democrat Party over the party's response to the rise in anti-Semitism. I think there's extreme positions that I believe will weigh on voters when they go into the ballot box come November.
Yeah, that affordability crisis that we're all facing. The price we pay for the stuff we buy, Jason, I think is going to be a big issue this fall. It's been said many times the party in power tends to lose seats in midterms. If that's true, that's not good for Republicans. They control the House, the Senate, the White House. Any reason think any of that's going to change this year?
I still, in some, with some reservation, but I think Republicans will hold on to the House and the Senate. I think things are still slightly breaking their way. The question in my mind, though, it goes back to what you mentioned with affordability, is can they talk about that issue in a way that the voter feels seen? And while that may sound a little bit like a loose thought out there for us, it is important, and voters want to know that they're being heard, and that when people are speaking about the issue of affordability, they're doing so with authenticity. And so we need to find candidates candidates really that want to win elections, they have to be able to talk about these issues in a way that the voter feels that their problems are being observed and rectified by those in positions of leadership.
All right. That'll have to be the last word this week. So many places we bet. If you have questions about any of the topics discussed today, or you simply like to learn more about the Pennsylvania Family Institute doing a great work in Harrisburg, Dan, where can folks find you online?
PAFamily.org.
Stay informed on all the issues in New York. Jason McGuire, New York Families, has a wonderful website as well. Where can folks find you?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.